I've never seen anything like it before, and to attempt to hit the ball out of there is pure madness.
The winner of the gold medal and the champion golfer of the year is Cameron Smith.
This is the one that I've always wanted to win since I was a little kid. So it just feels pretty amazing to be able to get it done today.
It's amazing that it's my destiny to be the first Aussie to win. Just incredible.
Hello and welcome to Playing from the Tips, Golf Australia magazine's preview and tipping show that is home to Sponsor Watch, Who Would Logue Pick, and so much more in our 103rd episode. As almost always, I'm your host, Jimmy Emanuel, and after a hectic week of so much golf, there's a little bit of a quieter week ahead, even though it is the Players' Championship week, which our first so-called expert called basically a major yesterday. That's right, he's known as an ardent defendant of some of golf's traditions, also a complex contradiction who likes to break down barriers, but Rod Morri, defend your words, basically a major.
When did I say that?
In a text message to me yesterday.
Oh, I did too, yeah. It was off the cuff. Oh,
I think it's about how we treat it, but as in previewing it. But
let's not go into the fifth major argument.
No,
let's do it. What you can't argue with, it is one of the 6 or 7 most important tournaments in the world. Best field, regular course. You can't argue with it. Whether you like it or not, it's the prestige people don't want to give it as a major. And I get that, particularly being a PGA Tour only product.
Particularly current.
And at the moment, exactly. But, you know, anyway.
Next, we remain without Adrian Logue, who was last seen sinking Soju bombs in Seoul. But we have a more than capable replacement. You may have seen from his Instagram he's been playing some of the great golf courses of Melbourne and New Zealand, recognisable by big frame glasses, often in a visor. No, not Ian Baker Finch, but the next best thing, Matthew Burns from Angus and Graysco Golfing. Welcome back, Matt.
Thank you. Kia ora, everyone. I've been in New Zealand a lot recently.
Yeah. So almost like in complete timing, Finchy was in Melbourne playing golf.
Yeah.
Posting, goes to New Zealand. You go to New Zealand, play golf.
I know.
And the glasses, the whole thing. He's your vibe.
You'd look fabulous in a Daiwa visor, actually.
I have a Daiwa 3-iron that's actually in my bag. I really
Can you turn it into a visor? That'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
I've got a Daiwa hat. I need the visor though. If you can put me in touch with IBF, that would be awesome.
I spoke to him the other day, literally the other day. Yeah. So,
and one of the game's truly wonderful people, IBF. Just a really lovely bloke.
Absolutely.
If
and still loves playing golf.
No, I'm obsessed with it.
If he's listening, we would really love to have him as the face of Angus and Graysco Golf.
Yeah. Or even just in for a drink and a swing of the golf club like Mike Clayton does. Anyway, moving on. Time for reflections on last week. Plenty to reflect on. As I said, there was so much tournament golf. Rod and I, you and I even skipped over the Puerto Rico Open last week. And that's probably where our highlight is as Australians. Carl Phillips. Everyone's known who he is since he was 3 years old, just about. He goes to America, goes to high school and goes to Stanford and does pretty well in college golf. Doesn't do remarkably well. Turns pro, goes to Corn Ferry Tour, wins there.
Bang, bang.
Wins on the PGA Tour.
Born for it, clearly. I've got to be honest, it's very rare that a player comes out with those kind of results early in a professional career at that level. That is pretty extraordinary stuff. I didn't think he was that good. We all knew he was good, but I thought he was just good like the rest of them are good.
Yeah.
He might, maybe not. Tigers picked him as his ambassador. That wouldn't have been by accident.
Yeah, I mean, he's got very good team around him in terms of coached by Colin Swatton. He's got good managers. His dad obviously does a lot, Paul, who works away and has forever. But there's serious talent there, and he's a genuinely nice guy.
Yeah.
He came and played the Australian Open last year. I spent a bit of time with him. I spent a bit of time with him at Asia Pacific Amateurs when we played for Australia, and spoke to him yesterday in a media thing. He's a really nice guy. Seems very well adjusted to what's to come, and works his tail off, which is obviously the biggest
I've
thing.
never met him or interacted with him, but from what I saw of his press conference, really mature attitude for his age.
Absolutely.
Incredibly mature, and clearly a very mature golfer. Obviously, thinks well on the golf course. You don't win golf tournaments at that level unless you can play. So that's pretty exciting stuff. And well done him.
There was plenty of others as well. Russell Henley winning the Arnold Palmer wasn't on my bingo card, but there's been a few who suggested he was probably pretty close. Jason Day making a double at a par 5 to come in on the 16th. That's not going to sit well with Jason. Phil Mickelson and Sergio Garcia winding back the clock. We'll go to Matt shortly for his LIV Golf highlights, given he's watched an hour of them or close to this morning. But I'd say Rio Takeda, Logues Rio Takeda.
Yep.
And Minjee Lee, 4 chip-ins in a week, 2 in a row. Broomstick putter looks the absolute...
Doesn't need it, Jimmy. Just chips it in.
Well, that's true. The broomstick looks the absolute go,
It
and
really does, yeah.
stormed home, but Takeda was too good.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, shout out to friend of the pod, Dean Hurden. Did we have Dean on before the US Open last year at Pebble Beach, if I recall?
No, I think we had him on before the year ahead at Congressional. Oh, I can't remember. We had him on to do something.
Yeah.
Great guy, Dean.
Lovely bloke, and picked up. He'd sent me a message early in the week. He said, "Oh, I'm back out here. I picked up a bag with this Rio Takeda." I said, "Oh, she looks pretty good." Saturday, I got up, I was like, "She looks better than pretty good, man." And then on Sunday, I was like, "Wow, what a talent!" Doesn't look to have a lot of weaknesses to the game, does she? That was a really impressive performance.
To be fair to him, we may mock Logue, and deservedly so.
Yeah.
But he picked her out a year ago and
He
said,
really did.
watch this. This is going to be good.
If you follow the Japan LPGA and the Korean LPGA, you will see the players that are going to come from that area and end up on the LPGA. Not all of them make the transition. Some of them are just more comfortable staying in Korea or Japan and playing there. G.A. Shin's a prime example. But those that do make that, and she's obviously one. You've got those twins. There's Iway twins coming out of Japan, and Yamashita, who lots of people say is probably better than Takeda. Well, that's going to take some doing. I will just say, the one thing I will say is that what we saw from Takeda was her best golf this past week. And if you take any player in that field and give them 4 days of their best golf, they will all look amazing, which is not to denigrate the performance, but the real key in this game is how good's your poorer golf. And that's what really separates the best from the rest. But based on what we saw, what's your 2 wins now on the LPGA already? Yeah. Looking pretty solid, isn't
Looking
it?
pretty good.
Tidican. I mean, exhausted this week, clearly. But what did she go? 36 rounds without shooting par or worse?
She's so good.
She is so good. It feels like it's going to be her year this year, and I think the same about Minjee. The look of Minjee with that putter, she just looks confident, she rolls it beautifully, and she's making the 50-50s.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They're catching the edge and falling in instead of going out. So
Her speed and everything looks really, really good. Disappointing because I'd had a conversation because long putters are kind of taking over a bit everywhere, and I've been a long time
You were ahead of the
exponent.
curve,
Yeah, absolutely. I've been yipping it with short putters and long putters for a long time. With all the guys playing the Aussie Tour, I'd said we need a collective name for everyone with the long putters and form a support group.
Yeah.
And it developed over a couple of weeks, and we settled on Brush Boys because it's like you're brushing it in. Right. Minjee's not a boy. We can't call them the Brush Boys anymore, so we're going to have to go back to the drawing board because she's going to be a key member. She's probably the best of us.
She'll be one of the most successful.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
Now, Matt, you watched a lot of highlights.
Yeah.
I want to get some takeaways from you.
Well, also, I feel pretty qualified because I was in Adelaide during LIV Adelaide.
Yes.
But I didn't go. And my dad went to LIV Hong Kong last week.
Okay.
So I've been around, I've been LIV adjacent a lot.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know anyone. Is Macaulay going to LIV Singapore?
He will be there. Hector
So
Macaulay
that's
will be.
3 out of 3 for me connections to LIV this year, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
Look, I love Fanling. I think it's one of the better logos in golf. I've had a lot of Dragons merch in my life, and I will get more Dragon merch in the future. Ted Ling, former president, is a good friend of mine. Look, it's a great event in Hong Kong. It's nice to have a city with kind of one golf course that you associate with an event, whether it was the Hong Kong Open or whatever, and like the big paperbug trees and the kind of feel of the event. Apparently, it's a really well-attended event. The locals love it. I think it's really great that Hong Kong has a place. It's obviously not the biggest city in the world. It shouldn't get,
They've always had great tournaments there, though.
Yeah.
They've always paid the money to get some top players to go, and it always turns out a good event, and it's a good finish. It's not my kind of golf course, but that doesn't really matter.
But it works well.
It's a great tournament venue.
It's
like Matt says, you remember the holes. It's one of those,
And especially
everyone
the
knows
18th.
18, and it always came down to a good finish there. A lot of Australian guys won there. A lot of Europeans played well there.
Remember Rory hooking it out of the trees left with a wedge there? He hooked it about 70 yards onto the green, went on to win the tournament. Just extraordinary stuff.
I
agree
met
with you.
Rory at the 2008 Hong Kong Open there. How
There
about
you go.
that?
That was probably the year he hit that shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
I
But
don't
no,
know if he played there a lot.
I think
What if
it's
Rory remembers that.
I'll text.
You'll see it
I don't
in-
have his number, so
You'll see it in Angus and Grace hat. Somebody, I remember I met this bloke back in 2008. Yeah, he's really
Maybe
good.
when Finchie's your ambassador.
Yeah, that's right.
He'll see Finchie. And
one
he'll be
step
like,
closer.
One
Yeah.
step
Yeah,
closer,
one
6
step
degrees of
closer.
separation.
6 degrees of Finch. Yeah. All right. Moving on. And there's a big week ahead. But before we leave last week, we managed 4 top 10s and 3 wins. One of them a genuine non-TGL win. We're coming to the end of our TGL winning rate. And that was who would Logue pick? Rio Takeda.
Yeah.
So we've now got 18 wins on the year, 26 top 10s, which Rod, you would know. Those numbers unmatched by any golf tipping podcast that was the brainchild of former Golf Australia editor Brendan James.
That's crazy.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't believe it.
Yeah. And
To be on top in a field like that.
That may sound pretty stupid, but 2 podcasts are his brainchild. So we're not actually... Well, yeah, the thing about golf's probably more yours. But
50-50.
Yeah.
I just had the name. He said, we should make it a podcast. I was going to do a book.
yeah.
Just write to 100 famous people. Say, can you just give us 100 that you know play golf?
Yeah.
Just send us back an email and somewhere between 100 and 500. And what's the thing about golf for you? You know, Bill Clinton and all these sorts of people. I thought that'd be a really interesting book in their own words. But I was never going to do it because I'm lazy.
Yeah.
So when we were sort of talking about a podcast, doing an in-depth podcast, I said to the big man, what do you reckon about this for a title? And he went, oh, I like it. And here we are, thinking about
There
golf,
he is.
which will be back out again tomorrow.
We'll talk about that towards the end. But as mentioned off the top, it is the Players' Championship week. There's also LIV Golf action, WPGA Tour / Ladies European Tour golf to be played. Let's start TPC Sawgrass, the jewel in the PGA Tour crown. Rod, why don't you start us with a little bit of golf course of where they're going to play for $25 million this week?
It's staggering.
25 million.
Is it sustainable? Surely the answer is no. But anyway, we will see. It is a great event, and I choke down the temptation not to give it that because I'm not a PGA Tour fan like a lot of people, but you can't deny what I think. The story of the course, the story of the tournament, the history of the whole place. I'll take a look at the course, Jimmy. I know you're going to talk about some of the players, but interestingly, and this is one of the things that makes it great, you can't talk about the course without talking about the players because the genius of the course is it doesn't suit anybody. There's only 6 multiple winners. Scheffler, if he wins this week, not only would he win 3 on the trot, he'd be the first to win 3 at TPC Sawgrass. Jack has 3, but he didn't win them at Sawgrass at the Players' Championship.
He won one at Sawgrass Country Club, I believe.
Well, yes, that's right, which is what they originally tried to buy to build the course there, Dean Beeman, and they wouldn't sell. So he found this awful land for, I think it was $1,000 or something. It was crazy what they paid for it, and they turned it into TPC Sawgrass. And it really is. I mean, apart from the offensive clubhouse built there, the story is a good one. But interesting stuff about the course. So as he comes to his notes that are in the wrong place.
I'm going to, before you get there and start talking about the golf course, the guys at the Fried Egg yesterday posted on Instagram some old player comments on this golf course.
Oh, yeah.
And so let's do this before we get to where it is now.
You do that.
This is Star Wars Golf. This place was designed by Darth Vader from Ben Crenshaw. I've never been good at stopping a 5-iron on the hood of a car, Jack Nicklaus. Where are the windmills and animals, Fuzzy Zeller? It's a joke, a real joke, Tom Watson. This is my favourite one. This course is 90% horse manure and 10% luck, JC Sneed. The 17th is a ridiculous piece of expletive reminiscent of some putt-putt carnival course, unidentified player. So fair to say things have changed a little bit.
Well, the players hated it at first. If you look at the old photos of it, it's a very rustic-looking place. It's also very neat and clean and straight edges now and beautifully presented. But if you look at the old aesthetic, it looked intimidating just as a place to play. All the really long, rough, wiry grass. Who knows what sort of snakes and alligators are in there and whatnot. But you're right, Jimmy. They've changed it a lot over the years and softened it a lot over the years. But the idea was an interesting one. It didn't really take off. This is the first idea about stadium golf, where they wanted mounding, high mounds along the sides of the golf course where the spectators could gather and get a really good view. It's one of the downsides of watching live golf. Often, if you're on the side,
the same level or below,
200 metres from the tee,
can't see anything.
Then you hear a thud, and that's the ball landing. The rest of it you kind of miss. So, look, some really interesting ideas. It was a real sort of ahead of its time. They have really turned it into a really interesting test of golf. Here's just gives you an idea. Adam Scott has played 22 times. He has 4 top 10s. One of them will win. 4 top 10s in 22 tries. There wouldn't be another tournament he's played 22 times where he hasn't got 7 or 8, 9, 10 top 10s. Matt Kuchar, 19 starts, 2 top 10s. Jason Day, 13 for 4 top 10s. So you can see this. Nobody gets on top of it. If you go through the leaderboards at Augusta, you will see the same names year after year after year. Top 10, top 5, top 10.
Yeah.
There's a real horses for courses. You just don't get that here. You can have Fred Funk and Tiger Woods both winning. People have made the point 1,000 times, but not many golf courses in the world where you could imagine that happening, and that's the genius of it. Look, it's visually intimidating. It's not as difficult as it looks, and a lot of the players, I think, have also worked that out. They've worked out the spots to hit it. There's some fabulous stuff on YouTube of Steve Elkington breaking down each hole, including his own little sketches, because he's quite the artist, Elkington, and he talks about the strategy. Really, really interesting stuff, and probably a more interesting golf course than I used to give it credit for a few years ago, and I expect that we'll see something really good again this year. Key here really is iron play. You got to hit, not so much, fairways are important, but you've got to hit it in the right sections of the greens. Lots of big rolling, there's bowls and there's humps, and you can hit a shot 1 yard further left, it'll be next to the hole, yard to the right, 70-foot putt over a roller coaster. So you've got to be sharp with the iron play, and that obviously leans towards the top players. I think the advantage here for the better players, Jimmy, is not so much the golf course, it's the stifling pressure come Sunday afternoon that they're more used to. I'm going to tip Michael Kim this week. He will be far more nervous standing on the 17th tee Sunday if he's got a chance to win than Scotty Scheffler will or Rory McIlroy. So I don't think it's not the course so much that plays a role there. When you come towards the end, it's the tournament itself and just how much pressure there is. Holes to watch. 17 gets all the attention. I'm not a fan of it. I give it a pass for this week. It's interesting to watch these guys play this hole as a rule. Not the sort of hole you want to see on a golf course because it eliminates so many players from being able to play it. It'll get all the attention, but for mine, some of the more interesting holes, the fourth, short par 4 with the water short, and Elkington was fabulous talking about that. The drivable 12th, which we've seen some interesting stuff on this year. I'm not sure whether they tinkered with it this year. They've added...
They've changed that the most.
Yeah, it was probably 4 or 5 years ago that they completely kind of blew it up.
They made it drivable, which it wasn't.
And then every year they gather the feedback and they get a little bit and they tinker and touch with it a little bit.
And again, it's a really interesting hole. And the par 5 11th, which is also got that diagonal waterway that goes through the middle. It's a split fairway. If you lay it up on the right, it's a tougher shot and over to the... There's some of the things. The 16 is obviously a great hole. And some of the par 3s, the 8th is just a brutal par 3. It's a roller coaster to green at the end of a 220-metre hole. Yeah. Like, good luck. I know they're only hitting 5 irons probably these days, that distance, but still, it's a long way to hit a golf ball and have any control. So it'll be interesting to watch because it always is. And, of course, the finish on Sunday. If you haven't read it, go on Google Phil Blackmar's blog about his travails at the 17th in the 90s. It's brilliant stuff. The poor man was tortured by the joint. But, look, major or not, it is one of the 5 or 6 most interesting tournaments all year. I expect we'll see it again this year.
Is it the best example of penal golf design versus strategic golf design on tour?
I actually don't think it's penal. It looks penal because of the water.
Yeah, I feel
you were saying there's a kind of a binary thing where it's like if you hit it in the right spot, it's good, and then if you hit it one step right of that, then you're is that why it drives people a bit nuts because you can't kind of. It's not shades of grey, more harder corners.
It's an interesting take. I hadn't thought about it that way.
Yeah.
It's like having Logue here.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's you talk about iron play, and I'll get into that with the players a little bit, but there's these occasional ones who bob up and they win who aren't the ball strikers. They have their week. They obviously, everyone can hit the golf ball, but they have their week of hitting it better, but they've done something exemplary to get themselves in that position. Fred Funk's one. He putted the dots off it and drove it in the middle of the fairway. There's been a couple of others, but I remember when Sergio won. Sergio drove the golf ball so good that week. Yeah, he hit fairway woods everywhere, but to your point, Matt, he hit them in the perfect spot in every fairway to set up the iron play. That's what Tiger would typically do so well, and Tiger played here not very well most of the time.
2-1,
Yeah, he won twice, won a long time apart.
Yeah, absolutely.
But he didn't typically show up here, and it was one of those ones you could put a rubber stamp. Mickelson typically didn't play that great, but had a few shots at it because driving the golf ball into that spot was his issue probably more than the iron play. So, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think the thing about there's not consistent is it's not the place you can show up with your B game unless you're probably Tiger Woods and be in contention because of what you're saying, Matt. You hit it on the wrong side of the green, and if you're a good ball striker but you're just slightly off that day, you're going to have 3 putts from there every time, But on to the players. We start at the top.
I'll think about that. That's an interesting question.
An interesting question,
You've thrown a hand grenade in there,
we start at the top of the players list. Scotty Scheffler, 2-time defending champion. He's played 3 times this year for 3 top 25s after slicing his hand open in a kitchen incident.
Slump.
Yeah. T3 last start, so it's probably
coming out of it.
It's trending in the right direction for Scotty. If someone's going to beat him, there's plenty of options. If you just go with the top 5 of the FedEx Cup all one word, because that's how the PGA Tour does things.
FedEx Cup?
Yeah, all one word.
Has it always been that way?
Yeah.
I've always written it 2 words. No wonder I'm on their blacklist.
There you go. If you look at the top 5 of the FedEx Cup, so that's a form-based sort of thing at this stage of the season, you can use that as actually an indicator. Sepp Straka, Russell Henley, Ludwig Aubert, Hideki Matsuyama and Colin Morikawa. all have claims.
Yeah.
They'll all have that game.
Nobody's getting laughed at for picking any of them, are they?
That's a ball striking collective, basically. Xander Schauffele was second here last year, fits the mould of the guys who play well here. Nikolai Højgaard is one of the best ball strikers in the world. He'd be a guy I'd sort of consider. Tommy Fleetwood, another. Shane Lowry having a great ball striking year. And then on to the Aussies, which is a pretty healthy contingent when you consider the last one we had to win. Cam Smith and the other Rippers aren't there, who would have all, if you look at it sensibly, probably be in the field. So Cam Davis, Jason Day, Minwoo Lee, Adam Scott and Carl Phillips gets in after winning last week. Rod, you've already tipped Michael Kim.
Playing well at the moment, and he's the kind. He's not Fred Funk, but he's that second tier of player who could bob up and grab a players.
That's a great tip. I was thinking about that too.
And in
He's
this,
having a great year.
yeah, well, just the trajectory he's on. You watch players. If you go and look at the 4 or 5 tournaments they play before they have their first win or a win, often you'll see the sort of trend that he's got. He's not doing much wrong. He's doing a lot
big
of stuff.
architecture guy as well, so I think he's got the right mind to kind of work it out that way versus trying to bang his head against the wall to
And
He's got balance at the
And
moment.
he's fabulous on Twitter. And yeah, I think he's in a good place for this game. You know, he hasn't got over the line these last couple of weeks, but he's had a chance, you know, at various stages of each of them. And all of that will hold him in good stead this week. And he probably won't hit the spotlight if he is going to be in contention until pretty late because he's not one of the big names.
Yeah.
They'll follow Rory shooting 73 before they switch to Michael Kim shooting 66.
Yeah.
So he can fly under the radar for a lot of it. Yeah, it'd be nice to see. I really think he does a fabulous job as an ambassador for the game on Twitter, or X as they call it now, and he's playing well. So.
Yep. Matt, a tip from you.
Wow, he's not my favorite golfer in the whole wide world, and he gets a bit salty and pissed off after he will be after last week, I think. But you know, Morikawa feels like he feels like the guy for this, where it's like not a distance test, which is kind of his problem, and his control is very good. And I also probably don't think you need to putt it immaculately here. I think his kind of control tee to green is going to be. I mean, this seems like the perfect place for him.
It's a beautiful
to do it.
golf game, isn't it?
And
Morikawa.
also, he really fumbled it last week, so I think, you know, a bit of vengeance is always a good thing to kind of have on your side.
Been a while since he was up there, and this is what happens. I mean, it's not about the hitting. That's not what it's about. Once you get in contention near the end, it's got nothing to do with that. It's about how you're controlling and handling your emotions, and can you think. And this is where the TPC Sawgrass really sorts them out. You've got to be. There are no holes where you can just switch off and have a lash at this tee shot. It's constant for 72 holes. You don't get to stop thinking at all. So. Yeah.
I'm going to go with, for about the 5th time already this year, Hideki.
Yeah.
Fits the mould of the players. He improved in his start at the Genesis. He sort of dropped a little, but improved. He's been top 10 the last 2 years here. He's a big title sort of player. Yeah. He's going to show up at big events. He's just, it'll be.
Feels like he's almost this year, doesn't he? Almost the Hideki that we came to know 4 or 5 years ago. He's so close to it.
Plus, we all just want to see it happen. He's just so electric when he's on.
It's a whole theatre of a week of Hideki would be amazing to watch. Like when he shows up on a Monday, Tuesday, and a Shrixon rep comes out carrying a genuine artillery of golf clubs. Just over his shoulder, and he hits. There's 8 different drivers. There's 12 fairway woods.
The coaches.
There's 7 putters. Gets to the gun going off Thursday. It's the same stuff that was in there last week.
That's
Nothing
exactly
ever makes it
so,
in.
Yeah.
He's just. It's just. This,
Unlike Rory, interestingly, last week, there was some
changed
interesting
back,
stuff that he said, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And wonder how well that went down.
he switched back with some old gear later.
I know.
Yeah, it's
always a source of tension between player and manufacturer, I would think.
Yeah. We may as well, while we're here, given none of us tipped Australians, let's get a top Australian from the field of Davis, Day, Minwoo, Scott and Phillips. Rod?
I'm tempted by Day, but I'm going to say Minwoo because, like Hideki, he's a big event player and he really came to the fore internationally at this event last year. I think he finished 6th, did he not?
Yeah.
He was in it for a very, very long time, and you could tell he just loved it. He revels in it. So if he can get himself somewhere near there, I think he'll be our best this week.
Matthew?
I'll take Cam Davis.
Nice. Yeah.
Complete opposite.
Yeah.
Total
but
opposite.
Played good here last year.
A fabulous player.
Yeah.
Underrated player, Cam Davis. His stats are amazing.
I'll go with Jason Day.
Yeah.
Jason's going to be headless about what happened last Sunday.
Yeah.
Like, he's doing a good job. He's out there vibing. Like, he's out there being Jason Day more, I think, than he's ever been. But he's still a relentless competitor. Colin Swatton coming back into the fold is so massive. You cannot overestimate that.
Again, that's just a mental blip, Jimmy.
Yeah.
The mistake he's made, you make a double.
Muddy ball and
Yeah, and he'll just look at that and go, you know what? I'm not going to do that again, am I?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
There's 2 shots that I'm going to get back straight away, probably 3.
All right, on we go. Let's get a little bit more local. Rod, tell us about the Australian Women's Classic at new host Coffs Harbour Golf Club, which will be only 54 holes starting Friday thanks to Cyclone Alfred.
Gives you a bit of perspective, doesn't it, Jimmy? It's amazing that they're going to put on any golf at Coffs Harbour Golf Club this week, let alone 54 holes. Massive shout out to the staff and tournament organisers. We talked about this when they got cancelled last week. People have no concept of the work that goes in by the number of people to make an event like this happen. So full props to them. I don't think Coffs Harbour has been as badly affected as some other places, but it's certainly copping more than its fair share. The good news is that the rain is not predicted Thursday to Sunday. No rain at all.
Correct.
The bad news is it's already had a heap of rain dumped on it, and it's going to be hot. So it's going to be one of those lovely steamy affairs where you can feel the humidity coming out of the ground and just enveloping you. So it's probably going to be
Good for your pores, actually.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. It's going to be it'll be a hot, sticky, uncomfortable experience this week, I would expect. So interesting stuff. The other thing I feel like, as wet as it is, the player who carries the ball a long way in the air has a really big advantage here. There will be no run. And you have quite a few players, particularly on the Ladies European Tour, who rely a bit on run. They'll hit a nice draw out there and let it run on the fairways and hit it quite low. Those players will probably struggle a bit more this week. And just the ground conditions, Jimmy, hitting off muddy lies and there's water underneath, the grass is wet. All of those things make it awkward, and particularly around the greens. So I'm not familiar with Coffs Harbour. Have either of you guys played it? I don't think I've even been there.
My mate Blake's was the
trainee there,
club champ for a couple of times.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's 27 holes. I'm not sure which 2 nines they're using. Do you know, Jimmy? Because I couldn't find it on either of the websites. There's a Lakes, there's a West Lakes, and there's something else.
I think they played a Women's New South Wales Open there.
They did there in 2018, which Meg McLaren won.
That's right. I have been there. I think I have played there, but it's been a long, long time since I have been there. Greens are raised up a little bit, so the greens were never going to be the concern for the rain. They sort of up and they're pretty firm. It's it's really good golf.
Short grass around the greens, quintessentially Australian. The
very tree line,
like
very much you follow and you turn. You're not going to be able to hit it over corners and that sort of stuff.
2D.
Yeah, but it's genuinely good golf.
Looks a bit Murray River.
Yeah.
You see a lot of that at the Murray River. And they're very impressive. Those big Australian gum trees look amazing. The fairways look plenty wide enough, but if you do happen to miss them, you're going to have a lot of tree trouble. In fact, I think I remember Meg she hit it behind a tree, had an air swing in the first round, the year she won there, because she told me about it. That's when she realised you don't have to play perfect golf to win tournaments. You can't have much worse than an air swing in a tournament, make it double, and she went on to win. But that's an indication of what you'll find there.
You love to see an air swing. I remember Lee Westwood having one where his back hit the tree stump as he swung it back, and then the top of the club, and everything freaked, and he just missed it.
Just yipped.
Yeah,
that'll stay with you for life.
It stayed with me, let alone imagine how Lee feels.
I remember Rory had one. I think Tiger had one too at the Australian in '97 when he came or '96 when he played the Australian Open here. You get that long grass out of the Oz. Rory hit it up on the bank right of the ninth there, took a full swing at it, and the ball was never seen again. It's
where
like
you go completely under
it just went
go
down
across the top of it, and it goes straight down.
It just went down, and they couldn't find it. They were digging around up there, the grassy mat stuff and everything. Anyway, that's unusual. In terms of players, most of these players won't be known to most of us. You've been a pretty hardcore golf fan to identify a lot of the players in this field. That's a good thing. It means it's be democratic. Good Australian contingent. Lots of decent players on the Ladies European Tour. It's a stepping stone to the LPGA. They'll all want to get to the LPGA. In that vein, I had a look through some of the names. Well, first things first, Grace Kim, an LPGA winner. She's a standout. She hasn't played particularly well this year, 2 times on the LPGA, over par in both events, in both Singapore and Thailand. But in this company, she should rightly feel pretty confident. Could be an important week for her.
Yeah.
Winning anything, doesn't matter whether you're supposed to win or not, winning anything is a massive confidence boost. And I think she'll be certainly one to watch. Annabelle Fuller is this name I keep coming to. She's an English girl. She got her card at the Q School at the end of last year. She's played 4 times this year, I think, and had 4 top 10 finishes. Or is it 2? 2. She finished 3rd, though, in Saudi Arabia behind Gino Titicaca. That was a pretty impressive field. So that tells you she's got some game. She's also 3rd in the driving distance, so that's going to work for her, and 1st in scoring average and 1st in that. Look, we played 2 tournaments this year. Let's not get too carried away, but that's a hell of a start, and you'd think that she'll go quite well. Meg McLaren's a bit of a North Coast specialist. She's won at both Coffs Harbour, as we said, and she also won at Bonneville, the ladies, this event when it was at Bonneville in 2022, I think. So she always has good feelings when she goes back there. Sarah Kemp, you mentioned before we started recording, Jimmy, nasty injury. Got hit by a golf cart, broke her leg.
Between two golf carts and broke both bones in the bottom of her leg. Yeah.
Oh, horrendous. That was last August, I think.
Yeah.
So.
Like sandwiched.
Yeah, correct. Ahead of last week's WPGA Championship didn't happen. Adam Pengilly wrote a story about her for News Limited papers, and it's very, very good, where she spoke about, I thought, could have been done. Very easily could have been done forever. And she's back playing a couple of weeks here just to test it out. She's still very much in her recovery stage, but spent quite a bit of time with Coach John Serhan over the last week. Went and played Wollongong with Kelsey Bennett. Played St Michael's with Kelsey and with Michelle Thompson and Steph Kiriakou as well. So she's from this area as well.
Yeah, indeed. And the other thing, of course, is that she was playing some of the best golf of her career. We spoke to her just before the International Crown, I think it was.
Yeah.
The other 2 years ago.
2 years ago,
and she was really on a bit of a tear late in her career. So it came at a bad time. Let's hope she can recapture that form. There's a reason she's one of the most popular players on tour, because she is honestly just a great person.
A legend, Kempy, an
absolute legend, no question about that. So it'll be interesting to see how she goes. You mentioned the name Kelsey Bennett. She'll be among the favourites as well. I think the Australians will have a bit of an advantage in some ways, just through familiarity with conditions and courses. But at this level, advantages are pretty small. We used to think every time the Americans came to play the President's Cup at Royal Melbourne that it would befuddle them and we'd kill them. Yeah, no. 2 days, they figured it out.
Half an hour, yeah.
Yeah, 2 days, they figured it out. It's like, it's easy. We just do it here, and hit it there. So, good. Anyway, Kirsten Rogers is the other one, obviously, from Perth. I'm going to go, however, with Annabelle Fuller, because I'm following the science.
Nice.
That's what the numbers say.
Matthew?
I'm going to go Kelsey Bennett because she's kind of from around that area. I think a bit of local knowledge, especially if the weather's a bit crappy and a bit wet under, mightn't be the sexiest way to play the golf course, but I think she'll figure out a way to play the golf course, and that'll probably be better than most. So
her good is really, really good.
Really, really good.
Yeah.
Really good.
Yeah. There's also Karis Davidson sneaks in here as well. That's another one who could do some serious stuff. I think the Europeans, with an extra week just adjusting and everything like that, they've all actually gone out. A lot of the PGA members around New South Wales said, come and practice here. And the best example, Magenta Shores, which hosts the Women's New South Wales Open last week, put up 30 of them. They all went and got billeted out and stayed.
Nice place to stay. There would have been a few of them thinking, you know what, this is better than playing golf this week. I was at
a player meeting where they were told to get out of the Gold Coast, and they all came and said, can we go to Magenta Shores? We like that. And it was,
it's a Pullman resort, I think, is it?
Yeah, it is, yeah. So
Magenta's great. I was up there recently. The golf course
is really good.
That is such a fun golf course. If you haven't been, go and play that golf course.
It's unique. I can't think of anything else like it that I've played in.
I reckon it's like PK.
I've not played PK, so that makes it awkward.
It's kind of like, it's hard to evaluate because it's new.
Yeah.
It probably doesn't get as many props as it should.
It's changed a lot.
Yeah.
Quite a while.
I think now it looks a bit more like PK. But yeah, God, that's a fun golf course.
So with that in mind, I'm going to go with, and also the other thing the Europeans get, a bunch of them came out and did that High Rocks thing, the like CrossFit, like
Louis does that.
Oh, it's like everyone I know seems to do that. A bunch of them got to Australia and did it. It's like the most.
There's 3 average looking units in this room that don't do it.
But like a bunch of them all did it before last week, and it's like your body would be melted for a week.
For those of us not familiar, run us through what it is.
It's like a fitness competition where you go through a course and you got to carry things, throw things, do all this stuff. One of the ones who did it, who I think is a seriously good player, who you could have wiped a line through at Sanctuary Cove because you can't recover from that, is Pauline Roussine Bouchard.
Yeah.
Seriously good player.
Won the Q School, I think, in LPGA years ago.
That's right. And was maybe the number 1 amateur in the world. I can't remember exactly, but a serious player. And so I think she's going to have a good couple of weeks. Don't know if it'll be this week or next, but I think she'll be there or thereabouts. We move along. Liv plays back-to-back weeks for the first time. Matt, again, with another Liv connection, albeit via Hector McCauley, who lives in Singapore and will be there, but that's okay.
Elite logo also, Sentosa.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah.
So Sentosa.
Sentosa.
There's just shades of Logue, isn't there? Logue's a big font, man. If you haven't read Logue's takedown of the Players' Championship logo that he wrote a couple of years ago, Google that and have a read. It is
annual reminder. That is very good.
And you're very much you're a logo guy. Yeah. I like it. This is what
so,
it is.
As Matt says, Sentosa Golf Club. It's Serapong course, which is one of the country's best. It's very good golf. Built on reclaimed land in Singapore Harbour by Ron Freem in the 80s. It's good for this sort of golf. It's
Good
big
tournament
bunkers, there's water, there's all that sort of thing. Like Hong Kong, very familiar for people who watch a lot of golf. Singapore Open used to be there. Adam Scott used to play the Singapore Open every year, and it was always great timing to watch. So it's familiar. This is another, like Hong Kong, one of the LIV events that's gained a bit of traction. I think it was the first to get an external sponsor. So Singapore have taken to it. They exactly like Hong Kong. It's not the biggest place in the world, but they like an event and they go to an event.
Bit like Adelaide.
That's right.
Maybe something to learn from that.
That's
if we
right.
could just reflect on that a bit.
That's right, yeah. But it's people go. It's had good events so far there. It's like you said about the heat coming out of the ground in Coffs Harbour. It's going to be hot. It's gross. It's humid. It's Singapore.
It's only 3 days and they wear shorts, Jimmy.
That's
Let's not
true.
feel too sorry for them.
Exactly right. But you'd have to imagine the players, the bigger names, playing up against the players playing in Singapore. There's going to be some mixed feelings. Some of them are ardent in how they feel about it and outwardly speak about it. But there's got to be something. There's got to be a little bit of something. For
Almost every one of them, Jimmy, would have grown up as a player thinking the Players is almost the number one tournament
Correct.
in some ways. And they really do believe it, the Players. They are invested in that tournament, all the PGA Tour players. You don't just walk away from a lifetime of that, cut it off and have no feelings about it. I think you're right. The likes of Koepka and Bryson. And,
I think this week is the biggest shame in between the PGA Tour and LIV. This is where it's the most obvious.
Yeah.
Because it's like a lot of the flash has been taken out of the play. Like watching Bryson at the moment, as electric as he is, try and work at the stadium course would be so good. And then it's like, well, we'll get to watch it because it's in our time zone, but having him play in Sentosa, it's like, feels a bit of a miss, doesn't it? It's just like, man, that would have been really fun to watch.
It probably playing in Singapore, they'll feel a bit mixed, but it's probably better than being at home where they all probably live around the corner from the place.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah, at least they're doing something else.
You wouldn't want to be just sitting at home and doing that. So
just on that, Laurie Cantor is the first former LIV player who'll tee it up in the Players.
It is indeed.
First one who's...
worth noting,
fact.
Yeah.
for sure. Of the players in the field here, Mickelson and Garcia wound back the clock a little bit last week. I think it's
What'd you make of that, Jimmy? Mickelson said some silly things at the end. But
Sergio's still a very, very good player who is always going to have some good golf. He needed a bit of spark at some stage.
80s finds out of Europe, is eligible for Ryder Cup potentially again.
It's a Ryder Cup year. Sergio plays good in Ryder Cup years. It's the sort
right
of
kind of golf course.
course that suits Sergio. So this week, Mickelson, I don't know.
He came from nowhere last year at the Masters, didn't he?
He will be gearing up so hard for the Masters. He's been doing those YouTube things with Grant Horvat. That's probably given him a little bit of juice about playing golf and having fun with golf, but he's an enigma.
Who knows?
I'm not going to waste my time trying to understand Phil Mickelson, I don't think. Dean Burmester had a good finish last week and continues to just sort of mill around there. Lucas Herbert also. John Rahm, another top 10. But dead last, Dustin Johnson, last week.
Extraordinary, isn't it?
Dead last.
I think it's the kind of thing with Liv and like with DJ, maybe at Brooks as well. It's just like if people aren't really watching them and they kind of just, you just really mail it in for a week and lack of consequences where you can kind of go, I don't really, not feeling it in Hong Kong. I'm just going to.
Brooks and Cam seem are slightly different. They're midfield. They're going to have a bad week and maybe finish at the second half of the midfield, but they'll get back and they'll contend. But dead last, and it's well acknowledged. There's some players in there who, like Anthony Kim's coming back from not touching golf clubs, and you're the number one player in the world for a long time. I mean, you would have thought, even on your worst week, Hong Kong probably doesn't suit him that well. But there's got to be a bit more there.
That a lot of anti-LIV people have made, that there's nothing to play for, they're not motivated and their games are disappearing. I don't think it's true for most. I think there's elements of that, as you pointed out with Brooks and Cam and some of those. DJ is the one who I suspect could be the one who just says, well, who cares?
Yeah.
I don't care.
There's got to be one.
I don't feel he was ever enamoured with the game in the way, for example, Tiger is. You don't see the love for the game. A bit more like Boo Weekley.
Yeah.
I'm kind of doing it for the money.
Yeah.
And when you've got as much money as DJ has now, well, if you were doing it for the money,
yeah.
kind of
Contrast is wild. We go back to Oakmont for the US Open, and he was just like
that's
Superman that week. That was so cool.
That driver 6-iron he hit into the 18th there, it's burned into my memory forever. Because you remember the big ruling snafu on the 5th, and it wasn't sorted out until the 10th, and all of it.
Yep.
And then he got the dodgy drop from behind the camera tower out of the deep rough, and he just got to the 18th turn. It was like, I'll put an exclamation mark on this.
Yep.
Bang, bang, I win. Yeah, extraordinary. That and Chambers Bay too. He hit possibly one of the best drives in history down the 18th at Chambers Bay.
Yeah.
The year that Cam finished fourth, I think.
Yeah.
Knocked it in there to like 7 feet. Yeah. Missed the eagle putt, but
3 hunked it to lose.
just extraordinary ability with the driver. Norman-esque.
Feels a lifetime away, though.
It
Yeah,
really
it
does.
does.
It really
It
does.
does. Yeah, it
been
truly does.
really
Yeah.
quite quick. He's not one to seek publicity and stuff either.
No.
Mickelson's been playing pretty bad for a couple of years, but you constantly hear from him because he likes to keep himself in the limelight. DJ's never been like that. He's got Paulina at home and some kids, and I think his life's pretty good. And yeah,
The
I
cool
do
thing
think
you get with
motivation.
Phil is, man, he won that PGA out of nowhere and then second in the Masters. Like, if he just finds one little weird thing to believe in.
Yeah. As an over 50 player, it's hard to argue there's been much
It's
better.
unbelievable.
Oh, he's
Landy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Who do we like this week? Matt, we'll start with you.
I'm going to go, I like Dean Burmeister, but I'm going to go with Mito.
Mito Pereira.
Pereira played pretty well last week, and we were talking about the broom. He's a brush boy now. Go on you, Mito. You get my stamp.
Yeah, I like Mito.
Well done, Mito
Rod?
Pereira. I'm going to go with Mark Leishman. He played all right the last couple of events, but more importantly, he'll still be fuming about losing the comp at Warrnambool, having shot 61.
Yeah.
Can you imagine playing off +5 and having 42 points, and then some 12 marker scrubs it down the last and manages to hole one somehow from nowhere to beat you by a point?
Yeah.
Just brilliant. But that is extraordinary. 61. I mean, I know these guys are good and they can do that sort of thing, but that's extraordinary. Warrnambool is not an easy golf course.
No.
And I know he's done it there before. But yes, he also finished second here last year, and frankly, it's about time.
Yeah.
Leishman has been underperforming since he went to LIV badly. That's the truth of it. He's a better player than his results say. It's about time he got up and won one.
Nice. I'm going to go with Tom McKibben.
Yeah.
Top 10 last week.
Yeah. Good player.
Good player. A lot of this sort of golf he's played over the last couple of years, so I think he's primed and he probably wants to prove a point too, to be honest. That will just about do us for 103. Rod, I don't want to lose listeners already, but we're going to be without you next week, clearly ducking for cover after your major-like opinion of the players.
I've had more controversial opinions, as you well know, Jimmy.
Yeah,
I talk Phoenix Open.
No, that's not controversial. That's not controversial from your normal pack.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
I'm going to wait for some feedback on this. Matt, you'll be busy this week. You go back into Angus and Grace Go Golfing, which you can find at 39 William Street, Paddington in Sydney. Looked it up. There you go. And online at angusandgracegogolfing.com. But you've got a bigger job.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. You got something in your pocket or on the table. That's primary job number one.
Look, I don't want to advertise what I'm doing, but,
He's got an AFL card for my son that he's got to get
Guys,
signed.
this is audio. You can't say you've got something on the table that you don't want to talk about. People get it's some sort of a card.
It's a Sydney Swans card that needs to be signed. But anyway, Matt will be busy with that. Thank you for joining us and coming back.
It's great to be back. And yes, I will be back in the shop this week if you want to come and... a few days I'll be back this week if you want to come and say hi. Yeah.
You might be the only one. In fact, his work patterns also match Logue, don't they?
Yeah,
he's
that's
kind
right.
of there occasionally, always claims he's doing something, but you can never find him at the office.
Yeah, that's right. It's a good replacement. Logue, speaking of, might be back next week, might not be, don't really care. But you and he can keep up to date with all the action from Sawgrass and beyond at golfaustralia.com.au, where you'll also find our sibling podcast, The Thing About Golf. Next guest, Rod, is...
Huggy's mate, Colin Dalgleish. Most won't have heard of him, but a really interesting guy. It was a top amateur in Scotland. I don't know if he turned pro, Colin. I've got a feeling he may not have. But yes, very heavily involved in golf. Good mate, Huggies, and it's a lovely chat to listen to the two.
No. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back next week on Playing from the Tips.